That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh, God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Let's go. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.
What's going on?
What's going on? One cast friends, listeners, family, whatever you are. Welcome to One Cast Fishing Friday Live with your host, Pete, Ben, and Trey. I don't know. I'm just doing weird stuff now.
He looks like a gamer there with his little microphone going.
That's right.
You can't respawn. I might respawn if the internet drops here, but like Pete said, welcome to Fishing Friday Live. What's up, Dwayne?
Dwayne, what's going on,
Speaking
brother?
of fishing, which we haven't done a lot of. Yeah, so head on over to onecastfishing.com and use the code the OneCast, all one word, at checkout to save money. Get your hands on those snagless jigs. The entire lineup. For those of you who don't know, if you haven't been on the One Cast Fishing website, there's flipping jigs, there's punching jigs, there's swim jigs, there's bladed jigs, there's football head jigs, there's the whole lineup. And the color scheme is fairly simple because, listen, it takes nothing to catch a bass. You don't need all those wazoo colors. So get your hands on those snagless jigs, get your hands on the weedless Neds, the soft plastics, the merch. I'm holding a pack of Nighthawks right here in my hand, which we're going to talk about here in a little bit. But use the code the OneCast at checkout. Help support One Cast Fishing, who's been with the OneCast the entire way. And then when finally wearing one, Pete and Ben, head on over to CarolinaWatersNC.com. I'm rocking a new hat right now. Head on over to CarolinaWatersNC.com. Use the code the OneCast, all one word, at checkout. Get your hands on all that UPF gear, those super cool hats that they have, those new double-stitched gloves, which are OD green color. Also get your hands on those buffs and all the protective gear that you're going to need to stay away from the UV rays while you're on the water or in the woods with that buck stopper shirt that they have out there. Where else do they need to go, guys?
From there, they need to use the link that I'm about to post and head over to Hobie Eyewear. Use the link again, unless you don't like to save money. That'll save you 15% off a pair of glasses, get you the floating frames. They have the new upcycled ones, which are made from recycled Hobie kayaks. So they found a way to implement those plastics into the glass frames, so they're not putting as much waste out there in the world. So it's always good for the environment. So yeah, use that link. You can get the floating frames, you can get the lifestyle collection, whatever it is that suits your needs. Great frames, great lenses. Definitely grab yourself a pair or 7, especially of those Sightmaster Pluses for those sort of cloudy days, because it's going to give you a huge advantage whenever you're trying to sight fish on those cloudy days. And Ben, what else?
And then before your next fishing trip, you need to go on your phone, whichever app store you have, download the Deep Dive app. It's got a lot of cool features in there that will help you plan your fishing trip, but also make adjustments if necessary out on the water. So it's going to have key locations, key baits to use. Depending on the lake, it's going to have your current flow, your water level. It's going to include a water clarity, the wind effects on the water, and a lot of those features you can scroll forward in time or also back in time to help you to make the right plan of where to target when. It's got the weather on there, barometric pressure. So it's basically an all-in-one app that allows you to dial in your fishing, so you don't have to go look on all these obscure core websites or power plant websites, different weather apps, and just really help streamline your planning and your efficiency out on the water.
Yes, sir. And then if you're looking to move to North Carolina, you're already in North Carolina, you need a new house, make sure you hit up our latest partner, who is Terry Carpenter, licensed North Carolina realtor with Howard. Wait, I'm going to mess this up because I didn't have it pulled up. And Terry's going to get mad at me. Terry, if you're watching, I'm trying to memorize this stuff still, but my brain is much. Anyway, Terry Carpenter is available for all of your real estate needs. It's his full-time gig, so he can get you out there. He can find you the home of your dreams. He's also a bass fisherman, so he understands the unique things that we are looking for as anglers in our families. When we bought our house, we used Terry. Let him know the only thing I wanted was a house that would fit my boat in the garage, and he busted his butt to find them. He carried a tape measure, pre-scouted some homes before he even looked at them, and there were some we wanted to look at, and he said, your boat won't fit, and we didn't even waste our time driving there. So it was super nice. But he is licensed NC Realtor with Coldwell Banker, Howard Perry, and Walston. You can reach him at carpenter@hpw.com. Or his number we have posted around socials. I'm not going to put it out there on the live because I don't want him to get too many robocalls, but I'm adding him to our link tree. You'll be able to find it there. I do know that after we put our phone numbers out there for the suicide awareness stuff quite a few times, I get way more robocalls now. So I'm not going to do that too bad for Terry. Dwayne, what's going on, brother? We already said that. David Fuchs in the house. Tim Trenny. I think I said Trenny. Not sure, but Tim, glad to see you're back.
Yeah.
Yeah, Christine.
He would in a minute. The boss said no.
Yeah, Christine's asking us why we're not in the same place. Well, it's cold.
We've
all been sick. So we decided to call in tonight from the comfort of our own homes. Trey's got to go out in the studio where it's cold. That's why he's bundled up. But
yeah, I mean, you guys know me. I always wear a hoodie when it's 99 degrees anyways, because I like to stay protected. But I should just wear my Carolina Waters UPF gear and I'd be just as good. But yeah, Christine, all of us have been, it's been a petri dish of like, I don't know, like just crud going around. And so Ben has been with it for like, I don't know, a week and a half, 2 weeks.
About 2 weeks.
I started feeling it Sunday during the Raleigh Bass and Saltwater Fishing Expo, which was last weekend. Unfortunately, you guys didn't come down, but other than seeing our smiling faces, business was a little slow. A lot of it had to do with the weather, probably a lot with the economy. And I started feeling sick Sunday. And then Pete the other day started feeling under the weather. So he's been congested and popping sooties like they're Skittles, I think, or whatever. So yeah, we decided to take the safe route. And that's why we're all separate tonight, even though we're all together.
Yeah, everybody I talked to that worked the Raleigh show sick. And then half the people in my office are sick. So
I'd like to find Zero and I don't know, smack him around a little bit because this sickness is terrible.
It is. It's annoying.
Yeah.
But I texted Trey earlier and was like, I absolutely hate life when you can't breathe out of one nostril. It's the most annoying thing in the world to me.
Yeah. We're definitely going to take some vitamins. Christine, Mama Fuchs might be in the liquid form, could be in the pill form.
All the vitamins I need are right here.
Stay in the boat, Pete. Yeah, we are male suring we're hydrating, Christine.
PD Dub jumping in over there on Instagram. What's up, Pete?
Hey, let's
Dylan, let me know your glasses are in the mail.
Yeah.
So
that was super cool, man. I know Pete talked about it, or we talked about it in the episode that's going to drop here soon on Spotify and Apple Podcasts and stuff like that. But congratulations again to Pete Dub and CJ for them. House. Yep, CJ House for being the winners of the Hobie Eyewear giveaway. One of them is going to get the Everglades float frames, and the other one's going to get the Mojo float frames. So you guys are going to love those glasses. Pete always drops the link in the description. Make sure you use that and start building your. I mean, you don't lose them. That's the good thing. I mean, if you step on them or run them over with your truck, that's a different story. But I mean, it's kind of a good and bad business model, man. Like you don't lose those glasses, at the same time, it's kind of like the snagless jig. You're going to snag less. So Ben's rocking them right now, looking like RoboCop up there. And I was thinking about that. Pete said, robocalls. And I'm like, what if it was RoboCop calling you? I would totally answer.
Yeah, 100%. And David Fuchs, I pinned your comment because I definitely need some more of those vitamins. For sure. So I just posted a direct link to Hobie. So definitely go check them out if you're not rocking any yet. So So what's going on, boys? First big derby coming up.
Yeah.
The first open with no co-anglers. Christine Fisher is fishing that Division 1.
Yeah.
So
we were talking.
Looks like they're gonna do it in a snowstorm.
Yeah, we were talking. It's because I looked up before. It's over at Clark's Hill. So over in Evans, Georgia, and it looks like, so I think the tournament starts the 23rd, but I think that Tuesday or 9 and or Wednesday they might get 3 inches of snow. It looks like so during practice and all. So I wonder how that will affect the what Bassmasters are going to do there. But probably just limit practice days. Be out there cold. It's going to be a cold event.
I'll tell you what, it's going to be one of those derbies that's going to be grimy if they let it go, dude.
I mean, I think they're gonna. I mean, cold and snow hasn't stopped them before, so as long as it's not dangerous, they're gonna fish.
Yeah.
It's
Dude, I
definitely
was seeing
not gonna
it's
be a ton
supposed
of fun.
New Orleans may get snow.
That's insane.
You know, I was telling you guys, I think the other night, that time when I jumped into Louisiana and it snowed on us, and they didn't have snow for 10 years. Well, that's 10 years ago
Yeah.
right now. So it's about time for them to get some snow down there.
Dwayne said they're calling for 5 to 8 inches on the coast on Tuesday.
Yeah,
So-
it looks like that high pressure system is going to sock in over North Carolina and push everything east. So I don't think we're going to get anything. Initially, they said we could get up to 20 inches, and then as models progressed, it changed. But one of the girls I work with was telling me about a time, it was like 98 or 99, that they all went to bed not expecting snow. The forecast at 10 p.m. said we're going to get snow. When everybody woke up at 7 a.m. to go to work, there was 20 inches on the ground in Raleigh. So that was like 98 or 99. So I guess anything's possible. Dwayne, you guys will be absolutely SOL over there if you get 20 inches of snow. We get it bad here, but the coast will be in even worse.
They'll be shut down. They'll be shut down. I wanna fish in the so I mean I've obviously fished in the snow, ice fishing, stuff like that. I've never had my boat out in the I've never had my boat covered in snow during a day of fishing. And I can tell you right now, if you got a boat, if it doesn't matter what boat, but bass boat or whatever, there is one beauty. There's a couple beauties to having carpet. I don't. And one of those, as long as it doesn't freeze over, you're probably not going to slip. If you have vinyl like me, you're going to bust your butt. Like that is going to happen. So I haven't had that happen yet, but if it does start dumping snow here, I'm going to make it a point to go out and fish in it because I want to.
You guys remember that video I think Palnick put out a couple years ago when he was breaking his new boat up? Because he's the one that lives up in Idaho, right?
Idaho, yeah.
Coeur d'Alene area, and he was going. It was January, and there's just snow all on the mountains on the side of the lake, right on the shore and stuff. That had to be. I mean, it was an awesome scenery video, but it had to be cold breaking that.
David said the snow forecast in New Jersey is always 0 to 80 inches, so you just never know what you're going to get in there. And Tim Triani, now I know how to say your name because you put it phonetically for me. How does the DPW handle the snow at NC? They run around with their hands in the air screaming like their hair is on fire. Everything shuts down. We do not have, I think there's like 3 salt trucks in all of the central North Carolina. And they do a lot with pre-treating with brine, but if anybody knows, that only goes so far. So it doesn't do a ton.
Yeah.
So if we get a significant event, we're screwed.
So I didn't know that actually. Today I was looking at my truck. I was talking to my wife about it. My daughter had asked me the other day when I picked her up from school, she's like, "What's all over your truck?" And I was like, "Well, kind of like salt stuff." And I had no idea that they use like a brine here. Because in the north, it just seemed like it was just pure salt that they laid down.
Yeah.
And it was nasty. It was all over my truck. I took my truck, even though it was going to pour rain tomorrow, I took my truck to get it all washed off. I had no idea they used like a brine mixture or whatever. So,
yeah, before we get too far into the fishing, I want to remind everybody, April 19th is our Spring Warrior Clash. We'll take warrior fishing on Lake Jordan this year, Jordan Lake, at A New Hope. So we've got that ramp reserved basically just for us for that day. It is the day before Easter, so everybody should be around. If you're a boater, please sign up. We're going to sign a warrior to you. It is a free tournament for everybody, boaters and warriors. However, this year we are doing a $100 tournament within the tournament with $50 going to payouts for first, second, and third. I believe we're going to do a 70-10-10 or 70, however that works out. I can't do math right now. It's too early. 80-10-10. And then we're going to do a $20 big bass with all of that money going to the winner, whoever weighs the biggest largemouth. So there's going to be an opportunity for boaters that is not open to the warriors
veterans.
to the veterans, just because you're not expected to pay anything. You're not expected to help the boaters with fuel or anything. It's a free event, so it just gives the boaters an opportunity to make a little money back if they choose to. I know if I won one of those checks, I would probably donate it back, but that's just me. I'm not saying that's what you should or shouldn't do. But yeah, super excited to have an opportunity for y'all to win a little money this year, have some fun. Jordan is going to be on fire April 19th. It could take a bag to win unless it stays cold for another 3 weeks, and then it might be a little slower, but typically that time of year is really good. Also, we are doing a saltwater event for the first time. I'm getting Trey to sign up to fish this. I'm going to go over and volunteer. It's May 17th out of Town Creek Marina in Beaufort. It's a saltwater tournament. I don't know 100% if I remember right. They're doing redfish, Spanish mackerel, trout, and something else. So there's going to be multiple fish species. Again, totally free event. So if you're a boater and you can take a veteran out for a day of fishing on the water, make sure you sign up for that. You can sign up for all those at warriorfishing.org. Dan Vaughn said they're calling for 5 to 8 in South Carolina Tuesday night. John T. Walton, hey guys, welcome to winter. Yep, it is here. It is socking in. We actually have decent tomorrow, a little bit of rain, but what temperature is not too bad. And Sunday, and then the Arctic sets in Sunday night. And I don't think we're supposed to get above freezing till like Wednesday. So
Yeah.
All right, I just talked a lot. You guys talk about something.
Well, I was gonna, and Ben, unless you got something you want to bring up, I was gonna bring up some pre-spawn stuff.
No, go ahead.
Yeah, so Pete kind of talked about it a minute ago. April, obviously, depending on where you live, because January can be the spawn down in in the Florida regions and Texas and stuff like that. But primarily here, our spawn, it can start really early depending on the behavior of the fish. But for the most part, you're looking at that, April, May time frame into June sometimes. But I posted a question on our community page, and Ben, I disconnected my phone from the internet just because I didn't want to see anything popping up on it. But I posted on our community page, like asking what people's 3 favorite guys in there. I think Pete actually replied.
I'm gonna pull it
and
up
people,
right now.
Yeah, so people talked about spinner baits and jigs, chatter baits or bladed jigs rather, all sorts of stuff like that. So I kind of wanted to talk about my 3 favorite, or 3 of the ones I always have on the deck in the pre-spawn, because not all fish spawn at the same time. So there's going to be those waves and stuff like that. So one area of your lake can be really heavy with fish on the bed, and then some of the other areas in the lake are going to be could be fish staging on those secondary, tertiary points, moving into a spawning flat and stuff like that. So I was going to talk about 3 of those. So if you guys got anything before I start, I'm going to give my 3.
I'll go through real quick. And then we'll go through ours.
Yeah.
I won't read mine. So our homie Luis Fernandez commented, said chatterbait, crankbait, swimbait.
Okay.
We've got Darvin Breaker, just a jig and pig. That's all my man needs. Barry Lawrence said chatterbait, weedless Ned rigged with a buoyant plastic and a spinnerbait. Veda Graves, my boy Veda, said put your head down and cover water with a jackhammer spinnerbait and a DT6. Our good friend Terry Carpenter said suspending jerkbait, chatterbait, and spinnerbait. Dan, who looks like he's up north because he's got smallmouth in his picture. Chatterbait jig tube, which I couldn't agree with more. I would sub 1 bait in there. For the jig, I would take a soft plastic swim bait rigged on a little head. That's just me personally, but a theme there for sure. Chatterbait, spinnerbait is on just about everybody's list. So go ahead, Trey.
Yeah. So yeah, I sent Pete some pictures. I don't know if he's going to pull them up here, but definitely one of my number one of the 3 choices. One of my number 1 baits in the pre, absolutely a spinner bait. That being said, the weather does dictate if I'm going to throw that spinner bait.
You should be
But for
with
the
a
most
shirt.
part, for the most part, what you get, unless you have a pure slick, calm day, a spinner bait is a great way to cover a ton of water. And I like my spinner bait. The reason why I think the spinner bait is just so effective is because it's hard. And the chatter bait too. Don't get me wrong. Like these are both, I'm not going to say they're synonymous because they're definitely not. But at least around here, and a chatterbait may be a preferred choice if you live on a lake or fish a lake a lot with a ton of vegetation, right? So my opinion might be different if I was out west where old Bass Warrior's at with a lot of veg or whatever the case may be, right? So a spinnerbait, definitely a number one choice for me. Those fish are moving up there. It's not, they are feeding. They're definitely feeding, but they're definitely pissed off when something comes past their face. And you can just cover a ton of water. And those fish, a lot of times they're staging on some sort of structure, whether or not that's the end of a dock post or a rocky point or something of that nature. And so a spinnerbait, and my typical go-to spinnerbait is always a 1/2 ounce. It's always a 1/2 ounce. And I'm really big on throwing it. I love willow leaf blades. I know some guys love Colorado blades and stuff like that, or a combination of the both of two. But I really like a double or a triple or a 4 willow leaf bladed spinner bait. I don't put a soft plastic on the back of it unless I'm trying to really slow it down the best I can. But honestly, what you see right there in the picture is exactly how I'm going to throw that spinner bait. I'm not going to trim the skirt down on this because it's already short enough. I'm not going to add a soft plastic to it unless I'm trying to and keep it just above while I slow roll it. But for the most part, I can do that with my rod tip. I can do that with my reel retrieve and stuff like that. So for me, that's definitely a number one choice. And Pete, like you said in the comments, it just is a common theme across the board for most of the people. And then before I move on to the other two baits, guys, put your opinion in there on the like what you would choose.
So I love a spinner bait too. I feel like, the last several years, spinnerbait is doesn't get as much play with a lot of anglers. Everyone opts for the bladed jig. So there is something to be said that old school spinnerbait is now something that's a little bit different when you're looking for something that vibrates, have vibrating motion down there in the water.
Yeah.
I love a spinnerbait going through like willow, the water willow grass. That shoreline immersion vegetation, I think it works extremely well. I've had some great days out on Jordan doing that in Tillery. But yeah, spinnerbait's up there for me. I usually put them interchangeably with a chatterbait. It just depends on the conditions in the lake. And I mean, I'm sure we've had all those days where they want perch with chatterbait, but they'll hit a spinnerbait and vice versa. So it's in the water, it's a similar action in the sense you're getting that sound, you're getting that disruption in the water with those blades. But there is difference in how that's presented to fish. And some days when they want that moving bladed bait, one works better than the other.
For sure.
Yeah. And I'm always going to start with a chatterbait regardless of grass or not. It doesn't matter. I've caught some absolute giants out of stump fields on some of our local lakes out of laydowns throwing a chatterbait. That's going to be my go-to, but it also depends on water conditions. If I have wind, I'm going to pick up a spinnerbait. If I don't have any wind or current, then I'm going to go with the chatterbait. So just those two are interchangeable. I don't look as much for the grass. Now, if there is grass, it's 1,000% always going to be a chatterbait. They just tend to fish better because you can rip them out of the grass and do that kind of stuff. So those two for me are sort of interchangeable, just depending on conditions. And again, everybody, you got to fish what you're comfortable with and your preferences. I think did my internet drop now? What the heck?
Oh, you're good. We hear you.
It's being squirrely. It looked like I got like so much going on my screens here. So that's just me personally. I know Trey's going to go spinnerbait because that's a confidence bait for him. He doesn't have as much confidence in a bladed jig. We've talked about it if you've watched the show. that's going to be his go-to. He's going to want to pick that up first. And it looks like he may have actually froze a little bit there. It looks like he's back in black. It's Trey. Trey, welcome back.
Yep.
So what's your
I'm
next
here.
one, Trey?
So
wanna share
everything. Well, I haven't even thrown this exact bait, but yeah. So Pete talked about like all the different conditions and stuff like that, and of course, if it's going to be slick, calm, and it's going to be bright bluebird skies, minus like vegetation and stuff like that. The second one I'm going to throw is some sort of flat or wiggle wart style bait, and actually the eyes on this bait. This is a local deal right here. This is from no, this is actually from California, isn't it? Yeah. So this is Catching Concepts. These are really expensive crankbaits, which is why I still have it in the package. But nevertheless, it's just an example. I'm gonna pick up something craw pattern style crankbait for the most part, depending on the water that I'm fishing. But a lot of the water around here, I'm gonna pick up some sort of craw or gill pattern crankbait. And I'm going to cover a ton of water with that. Usually when it's bright bluebird skies, no wind, and I can just burn that thing over points and in between docks or in between cover, getting a reaction strike if they're holding on timber, laydowns or something that are on a point. And of course, like the depth is going to be different, of course, based on water clarity and things like that. But for the most part, that 2 to 5 or that 6 to 10 dive in flat side ish crankbait is going to be important. And then another thing too, is this time of the year, the fish that, they've went through their reset in the wintertime. So they're going to be hungry. They're looking for anything that really comes in front of their face, and anything that imitates like a craw or a bluegill or something that they can have as a big meal that comes across their face when they're in that pre-spawn staging mode. They're going to probably snatch that thing up. So this one right here is actually silent. And we learned a lot last year, Pete, specifically Pete did. I was in his boat. And learned a lot about like silent crankbaits. And I think there's definitely a place for them. If you notice that fish are around and they're not, it's dead slick calm and they're not really reacting to anything, but you still want to cover water, you might want to change your crankbait up to where it's not knocking. And if you have something that's silent, even silent jerk baits are good too. Throw that out there. So a crankbait is definitely a staple bait that I'll always have on the front deck. And a crankbait just catches them, man. Like it just flat out catches fish. It's probably besides a minnow and in a nighthawk or something like that, it probably resembles a bait fish better than a lot of other baits do. But I definitely see where Bass Warrior's coming from with swim baits, and we can talk about that later. But crankbait's definitely going to be another one. What about you guys?
Yeah, crankbait's definitely on my list. I kind of keep my crankbaits within, like, I guess 3 I would use in kind of the pre-spawn. So more of that late winter, early pre-spawn when they're first start to stage. I'll be throwing a rock crawler or a wiggle wart, especially if I'm in a place that's got a lot of rock or around riprap and all. As it gets a little warmer, or maybe I'm going down banks that's more laid down, so it's usually a flat-sided crankbait. So like a Fritz side or something. I had a lot of success using a Fritz side. I think those are phenomenal. And so those are,
they just catch them.
They do. And then I may play around with like a DT6, DT8, that sort of thing. Yeah, a lot of times a crawdad color, especially when you've had a couple warm days in a row or after a warm rain, and you get back in some of those flooded runoff areas. Although there's just something about it, even though if the water is dirty, but those bass a lot of times will push up right to feed, push up and kind of sunbathe in that warmer water. And at that time of year, there's a lot of crawfish coming out, so they're gonna key on that. So that's a solid color. And then the other crankbait I'll use if I'm fishing a grass lake, hydrilla, coontail, submerged vegetation, then it's a rattle trap.
Mhm.
I'll just be ripping that through the grass. So
Yeah, and I think one of the guys on the comments talked about a lipless, and I know Pete's going to go here in a minute, but a lipless crankbait is absolutely a phenomenal pre-spawn bait. A lipless crankbait is just a great bait overall. But I've had some really good success with lipless crankbaits in the pre-spawn too.
I've caught some big fish on Jordan going up that one the creek that gets warm before all the other creeks up there. But on the lipless, I just have a tendency to lose too many lipless, like in Jordan and lakes like that. So usually I reserve those more to when I'm fishing grass lakes.
Yeah.
Pete, what you got, bro?
Yeah. So like I said, I'm gonna chatterbait or spinnerbait is one and the same to me, just depending on conditions and what the fish are doing. Some type of flipping bait I'm always going to have because I'm going to slow down around cover a lot of times. So more than likely it's going to be like a Nighthawk Texas rigged or a jig, just depending on how I'm feeling that day. And I'm going to let the fish tell me what they want. And that third one, I'm with you on it, like a shallow crankbait, flat side, frit side, those custom balsa ones like you showed off. Those are kind of my three. I can cover a lot of water with them. They're going to get bit. You're going to get reaction strikes. And those fish get super spread out pre-spawn. They don't tend to stack up. They'll reload if you find an area they're coming to. They'll absolutely keep coming. But one thing I found is you typically don't find a giant school of fish in the creek mouth. They'll be a little bit spread out on different things. So, I'm just trying to cover water. I'm trying to find those bigger fish. A lot of times, the bigger fish are the ones that spawn first. So you want to cover as much water and try to find those big girls because they're a lot easier to catch before they get on the bed because they're going to dump their eggs and they're going to move off. I know everybody lives and dies by this. They're up there for 3 days and this, that, and the other thing. But if you watch studies they've done, those big girls come up a lot of times, do the dance, dump their eggs, leave, and they may spawn a couple times. They may spread it across different beds, but they don't typically sit on one bed for a significant amount of time. So, and that is not the rule or the exception, as we've learned. Fish behavior, they're wild animals. We don't know what we don't know. So you do find them sometimes sitting on a bed. I'm not saying this is gospel that they're not going to be there, but you'll increase your chances. I am going to throw a fourth one out there because nobody has mentioned it, and it's one that I like to throw. I probably don't throw it enough because I'm trying to put fish in the boat in a derby, but a big glide bait can absolutely catch some giants, especially around laydowns, docks, and those types of areas this time of year. So you definitely don't want to be afraid to pick up a big glide and throw that around, or something like a mag draft, a big softy, any type of big swim bait, especially around docks. Those fish will get on those docks. And I know guys are probably gonna come on here and say, well, you can catch a bunch off of the right dock, and that might be true. We don't fish a bunch of docks, so I'm definitely not an expert on how docks play pre-spawn. I've seen tournaments where guys will pull up to one dock and catch a couple good ones off it. So there very well may be something with docks, but typically a laydown, for instance, I typically in pre-spawn don't catch more than 2 at the most fish off of one, whereas sometimes post spawn, as they're starting to transition back out, sometimes you can pull up. We saw it last year. You might pull up to one a little bit deeper and look, and there'll be 4 or 5 fish locked onto it, just sitting there waiting to move back out after they did their thing. So that's me, but I'm going to pull up one more picture if you want to go ahead, because you sent me one and I forgot to send it over, but I'll show.
No, it's all good. And if for all y'all watching,
this is where you can get this bait.
Yeah,
Bam.
so you can definitely. This is the bait that we've been talking about, which is the Nighthawk. And I'm holding one in my hand here. This one's an Alabama craw color. But green pumpkin and hematoma, South African special, they all have their place. That's the Alabama South African special right there. This bait. So like Pete said, like it may not be a giant school of them there, but there definitely can be several fish within a very small stretch. And we saw that last year
Yep.
And a lot of you guys have seen it before. There could be several fish. I mean, to include dozens of fish in a small area that have made room for each other, that are hanging out on, they moved up from the creek channel. They're pushed up onto a shallow bank, but they're waiting to really migrate their way back into a pocket to where they have the appropriate water, cover, things like that to dump their eggs. And it's almost like, I don't know, I don't think they do it, but maybe they do it. It's like they're talking to us like, hey, Jim, hey, move up here next day, and then I'll come in behind you here. I don't know if they do that, but it's funny how some of these fish they'll be like 10 feet apart, right? And so if you find yourself in that situation and you've caught a couple of them, on a spinner bait or a crankbait, but maybe that there's more there, that's when you run a really slow down. And a jig is applicable with this soft plastic as well. So if you're not going to Texas rig this and you're really a big jig guy, I highly recommend that you take, a snagless jig or whatever jig you want, and thread this thing on I say that is unlike a chunk or unlike something, a different profile bait, the appendages on this bait are really small, and they make a lot of movement when this bait goes down, and even when this bait sits there. So it entices that fish to come over, take a peek at it. And I don't want to make it all about this bait, but I will tell you that this bait is definitely, there's more purposes besides throwing it on a Texas rig or a jig. You can rip the little side appendages off and put this thing on the back of a buzz bait. You can put it on the back of a chatter bait. You can put it on a spinner bait, I guess, if you wanted to. I mean, this thing has a lot of versatility. But I'm always going to have a soft plastic on the boat, especially if the conditions are saying, hey, they're probably not going to bite a moving bait that well. So they're there. It's slick, snot, calm conditions, whatever. Or you've just blasted through a bunch of them, but that there's more there. And we did this last year. I mean, we slowed down, we flipped in there. I mean, we caught pretty much everything on a spinner bait, but then we had a key fish come off a flipping bait that was about 4 pounds, and moving baits went right over its head about 15 times. Right. So always have something in your back pocket, especially if your fish are staging around big gum trees, big things of buckbrush and stuff like that, where you really can't get a spinner bait or a chatter bait or something like that effectively over, under, or around it. You want to have something that you can get in there that's going to fall right in front of their face. It's going to entice them to eat. So I'm definitely going to have a Nighthawk paired up with probably a 1/2 ounce tungsten weight pegged with a 3 or 4/0 flipping hook on it, or I'm going to put this on the back of a snagless jig, and we're gonna make some money doing that. So that's what I got on that the third.
He cut out. Yeah, so
No,
I'm always gonna have a jig tied on too. Typically a Nighthawk trailer. What else? What else do I have for them pre-spot? I like swim jigs too a lot. I like throwing swim jigs, especially on those days where you don't have a lot of wind or more bluebird skies. It's also kind of a replacement for the chatterbait. It's just a little more subtle to have that style of moving bait with a swim jig. There's not as much commotion in the water. I'll have a Texas rig plastic of some sort, and I'll go in between a creature bait like the Nighthawk here or a worm, some type of worm. There's just something about a worm that will catch fish. Whether I want to throw a speed worm or a trick worm or what's it called? I'm running the blank here. It's the one I run on my shaky head. It was the Z bait.
Oh yeah, yeah.
So usually, and then I'll also have a Ned tied onto the flip around for those highly pressured days. You gotta have one.
Cow, a Ned rig.
You gotta have one.
Hey, it catches them, man. It absolutely catches them. The more and more the water is beat up, the more and more these fish get conditioned to all the baits that we have. And it'll probably even happen with a jig head minnow. It's probably already happening, right? But a Ned rig is just something that just makes zero sense to me, and it just flat out catches them. You know, David Fuchs says he loves the Ned rig, and I tend to agree with that. So if you're looking for good Ned heads, head on over, like we said, to onecastfishing.com. They got great weedless Ned heads, and actually there was a lot of people that I talked to at the show this past weekend.
Who loved the Ned head? Yeah,
They do. Yeah,
They
they're
do.
always. They do. I mean, I love the Ned rig. I mean, it just catches fish. I mean, big fish, little fish, they all got to eat, and a lot of the things they're eating, they're tiny little crayfish, tiny little minnows, and so it's a great imitator down there. And you know, you can throw it around brush piles, out on rocks, throw it around docks. Maybe doesn't work the best in vegetation, just because you're usually throwing on lighter lines. So if you get a bunch of a big fish and a bunch of vegetation wrapped around the Ned, but certainly around brush and all, or on the outside edges of buckbrush and that type of thing. If that's the pattern, it definitely helps pick up a few more.
Hey, welcome back, Trey.
Oh, he made it.
Yeah, I'm here.
I'm trying to think what else.
And I'm the opposite. I never throw a Ned rig.
I mean, I always
have me, but I haven't tied one on in probably, I don't know, 6 years. Just
I've always got one tied on.
I threw it a lot up north, and I just can't do it down here, unfortunately. I should. I know I need to probably more, but yeah.
I throw it a lot when bed fishing.
Yeah,
I'm hard-headed.
yeah, it's a great fit. It's a great bait for bed fishing, man. It really is. As long as you're not trying to rip them off the bed, like it's a great bait for that.
No, you gotta, and that is the one problem with bed fishing. I mean, you can't, you know, fish coming off the bed fight harder than fish any other time of year. They, I mean, they're angry, and they like to really pull and fight, at least in my experience. So you can't with the Ned rig, you can't really horse them in. You got to play them out for a few minutes, but or a few seconds, depends how far the bed is, but you can still manage to do it, no problem.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah. I've never gotten in a situation where I couldn't get a fish that's actually locked on the bed to bite what I want them to bite. It might take a little longer. So, a Ned rig is something I'll pick up, but typically I get them to eat a bigger flipping bait, and I just have way more confidence with 20-pound fluoro and a big flipping hook. So I don't go to that, but I know I've seen Trey do it. I know you've done it, Ben. I did pick the wacky rig up this year for the first time on a couple fish that didn't really want to eat.
Oh man, I forgot about the wacky.
Now I tested a BFS rod.
We don't talk about that rig here.
Yeah,
Rig.
I did test a BFS rod for a company, and I did fish it on a bed a little bit just to test it, and it worked. For me, again, fishing is about confidence, and it's not one of those baits I have a ton of confidence in that I can get them off the bed, and I like to grind them in as quick as possible. So I don't know, but I know they work. Lots of people catch them. I'm sure I've donated lots of money to people that have been throwing a Ned rig. So
yeah,
it's one of those
just like
things.
we've donated a lot of money to people that have thrown like a freaking salamander on the back of a Carolina rig in the spawn. You know?
Yeah.
Oh, I always got lizards in for the spawn.
I'll throw one and flip one on a bed. I feel like that bite has changed, and it's not as good as it used to be. I don't know. That's me personally.
The lizard?
They just don't seem to eat the lizard as good as they used to. I swear it used to be you would flip a lizard on a bed, and it didn't matter. They couldn't stand it, and they would eat it. And
well, what you gotta do, you gotta flip it a little bit past and slow roll it in there, or roll or re-really fast and hit that lizard in the side and surprise that bass. That they usually turn on that thing.
They do it with a D-bomb too, or a Nighthawk. I remember the say, like you talk, flip past the bed and drag that salamander in there, and I feel like as soon as it got in the bed, they would eat it. And I just haven't had the same luck the last couple of years. So I always have one to throw on because I'll keep a pile of baits when I'm fishing a bed, so I can rotate through till I figure out what they want. And And for me, it hasn't done like it used to. Dan asked y'all throw a jerkbait during pre-spawn. I don't. I know it's a bait that gets ate a lot. It's just one of those things that here locally I don't. Up north, I did a ton. I threw a jerkbait for smallmouth, a pile pre-spawn.
I pretty much always have a jerkbait tied on. A lot of times because the fish still get in brush piles and secondary points and stuff when they're moving. And so if I see one on, a brush pile on a live scope and all, usually I try to use a jerkbait over that. And different times, a jerkbait works good on a bed too.
I was just gonna say that, like, a jerkbait, if you're not, if you are fishing a tournament, like, be advised, like, a lot of times they're going to be hooked outside the mouth with a jerkbait because they're going to go after it, try to kick it out of their bed. But a jerkbait, a small profile jerkbait, is one of my favorite baits to throw on a bed. Absolutely.
And I guess I should also say, like, if I get down to Florida here in a couple weeks, they'll be pre-spawn or spawning, hopefully. Or certainly pre-spawn, but maybe hopefully some spawners, depending on where I go. But like in grass lakes, just like I always have a rattle trap tied on, I've always got a jerkbait tied on.
Yeah.
Kind of a shallow running jerkbait because they work great, coming over that hydrilla or eelgrass or ripping it through. It's phenomenal for that too, for those type of lakes.
Yeah, John, I'll throw a floating worm just on a spinning rod, just straight with a 20-pound braid to fluoro leader, and it's tough to beat. Garters will eat a floating worm pretty quick when you bring it by most of the time.
Yeah, Pete made a huge call for us last year with a floating worm, and I don't know if that fish was pre-spawn or post-spawn. I'm pretty
sure that fish was guarding just because of where it was, but
yeah, he was under a laydown. It just seemed like a great place for him to be a fry garter, and that floating worm is absolutely clutch. But it also works in the pre-spawn too. They'll get on that floating worm. It's just, that's a bait that I'm not going to throw that bait if I'm trying to cover water. Like, it's a great bait, but it's just not a bait I'm going to throw if I'm trying to cover water. However, there are certain lakes, depending on where you're fishing, that these baits that we're talking about may not be the ticket, right? Like blueback herring lakes, things like that, maybe smallmouth fisheries and stuff. So, we're talking, maybe the South Carolina, North Carolina area, but for the most part, you're going to get some money out of throwing a crankbait, flipping a soft plastic like the Nighthawk, and throwing a spinnerbait or a chatterbait. And then, like Luis Fernandez and Pete, you talked about it, glide baits, soft plastic glide baits, hard glide baits, man, they are great baits in the pre-spawn. And, that's something that I have to get better at. I'm not good with either of those baits, whether or not be like a mag draft or a Megalojohn or a big glide bait. I'm not good with those baits, probably because we just don't have, they're not just only good for docks, but, we don't have a lot of docks around here. So
no, they're good for laydowns. They're good for open water. They're good for just on anywhere. Just, you have to pick it up and throw it. Yeah. And it's you're looking for 1 to 2 bites with that. So typically in a tournament, that's not going to be the first thing you go to unless you find something super special, like in practice.
Yeah. But the floating worm, John, fire, it's a great bait.
And I will throw a floating worm to cover water because I have a certain way that I rig it and fish it that I can cover water as fast as I can with any of the moving baits we talked about and get bit. So maybe I'll do a video on that this year after the tournament season wraps up, because I learned it from our good friend Destin Demarian, and I don't want to give all his secrets out.
Yeah. But man, I think like, if you got, for those who are watching right now, like if you got feedback on your pre-spawn baits, I know you guys have been dropping them in here. We all got personal preferences and stuff. I do want to say there's a special time that really it's a small window for me. And I will always, and I mean always, have a frog tied on. Depending on where you're at in the country, depending on your lake and what the spawn is, there's a really small window that I have found where a frog absolutely crushes fish. And it's not so much pre-spawn, but it could be. And we're talking about targeting those big females that are sitting off the bed waiting to move up. And sometimes, depending on the situation, you can absolutely hammer them if the conditions are just right with the top water, man. And it is so much fun because you're usually going to catch a really big one when you do it. So don't be afraid to throw a frog or maybe another topwater bait, but a frog is one of my favorites. In that pre-spawn, maybe the males have moved up on the bed, but you're noticing that the females are kind of hanging out and they're really pissed off and they don't want anything around their man up there doing his business. A frog is a great bait. I always have it tied on 100% of the time.
Yeah, I have transitioned away from the frog in that time period. There's 2 other baits that I have had better success with, and I'm not going to talk about those just yet. So at some point in time, I will put that juice out there, but I am not prepared to share that. And Trey knows exactly the baits that I'm talking about. Because
yeah, I always have them tied on.
We have absolutely wrecked some fish in that window. Because what I found is a lot of times those females don't necessarily want to eat the frog. They're just mad that frog is coming over their head. So they'll crush it, but they never really get it in their mouth good to where you can get a hook set. There's some other baits that they will get it in their mouth and you'll get a hook in them because you don't have to wait 3 seconds to jack them.
I do have one.
I mean,
I like to throw.
Yeah, that's a good one.
A buzzbait's always clutch.
I'm gonna be throwing them more this year when we get those Pearl Nighthawks in as a trailer.
I mean,
hey, you're not supposed to tell people yet about my Pearl Nighthawks.
if Pete doesn't want to say it, I'll just clue you in, but I won't say it. If you want to keep something in the strike zone that resembles what a frog does, maybe a popping frog, that's what I'll say. It'll stay in the strike zone.
They prefer the back.
It's a great bait.
There's
to
also
me, that is
one.
Yeah. These are great buzz baits. I love this sound.
One of them is a popper. I'm not afraid to say that one because a lot of people.
All right, there you go.
The other one I'm going to hold close to the vest for now because there's only about 4 people that I know that throw it, and I don't want to give that one.
Mike Johns is one of them.
Yes, he is. Yes, he is.
And hey, we actually learned something from Mike Johns.
Talking about the Florida bait, right?
Huh?
You're talking about the big Florida bait?
Maybe. I don't know. We'll talk about it offline. It might be one we talked about at Norman. You weren't there.
It's actually a full-size night crawler.
Yeah.
Oh man, I can't wait to talk more baits in the future as the season progresses. But for now, down here in North Carolina, at least, we are definitely moving towards that pre-spawn phase. There are some giants that are moved up shallow, and that's one of those things right now. It's so daggum cold. If you're not out there beating the riprap or open water with an A rig or a minnow, and you're trying to stay dirt shallow, right now is the time. Yeah, I mean, unless it's a really beautiful sunny day or over the next couple of days it stays sunny and those rocks and timber that's exposed is able to soak up some heat. It's going to be a tough one going super shallow, but there's always fish up there. So pick up that spinner bait, pick up that crank bait, pick up that flipping bait, slow down, cover. It's like slow down, but cover water.
This time of year in this cold water, the only thing I'm throwing is a jig, and I'm fishing it slower than anything you've ever fished in your life. For those super shallow fish, I've never had luck getting them to eat anything moving when they're up there in the dirt and it's cold. Those fish on the riprap and stuff, I'd like to throw crankbait, certain crankbaits, a rig, but for me personally, I know everybody's different. So again, these are our personal experiences and confidences before you tell us how wrong we are. I like you look at it with a big jig, and I don't like to throw a trailer that moves. I like a jig and pig. I want everything to be super subtle in this cold water.
Yeah. And when I think the biggest the thing, a lot of guys, we all watch, Pete doesn't too much, but Ben and I watch a lot of fishing videos and stuff on YouTube, because I've learned a lot from guys on YouTube, and it's not the pros either. You know, you see something, you're like, there's no way that would work, and it does. But I think the important thing is just like we're telling everybody right now, is what you see on YouTube is a lot of times relative to the bodies of water that they fish. I'm not saying it doesn't work everywhere, but just understand, like when I look at a guy who's down in Alabama and he's fishing a jig in January, I need to understand that his water, his fish behavior and everything down there could be a lot different than what it is up here in North Carolina, right? So those are things that are important. So we're not going to say what we just told you won't work for your lake, but just understand, like every lake has every lake has its own attitude.
Yeah, you gotta let the fish tell you what they want. Let me read some stuff. Buckeye Buzzbait, Dan Vaughn's a fan of. We use 911 Customs. That's a local company to us, and great. Dan also said Buka Baits. I'm not going to say which bait he said. If you're not on Facebook, you're not going to see it. Just kidding. It's a 6-inch trick shad. Go buy one because they are straight up killers. Pete Dub said Pete is not letting that juice go. You're right, but if you want to Venmo me $100, I'll tell you what bait it is, color, and everything, exactly where to throw it. No, I'm just kidding.
We're not. Pete's messing with Austin here. It's not fish tips. It's going to be Pete coin.
That's right, Pete coin.
Just go ahead and Pete.
We had to teach David Fuchs this when he came down to North Carolina last year. Slow down to go fast. Absolutely. This time of year, especially. Pete W said he tied on an A-rig today and then realized he forgot all his swim plastics at home. Yeah, that would make it a little tough. A little tough to fish the old A-rig if you didn't have any swim plastics. And then David, that's why the Ned works so well in New Jersey. You have to slow way down. Yep, they just work up north too in general. So, I don't know why they like that stupid Ned rig with that stupid TRD on it that literally looks like nothing, but they do.
They like a Senko.
Like a Senko.
That looks like absolutely nothing. Makes me so mad that they eat those dumb baits.
You know what I always, so about the only thing, and not necessarily, so like when a lizard falls off a tree and hits the water, lizards swim with their legs kicked straight back, right? Usually. I mean, or that's how they swim. They kick straight back. So a small snake or a small lizard, when they fall off the tree, which usually happens in, that March time frame, it starts to get warm. The amphibians start coming out and playing and stuff like that. So a lot of lizards will fall off the tree, which is why the salamander has been always the clutch bait in the spawn and stuff like that. That's about the only thing I can think of, is like when you're throwing a big old, 5-6 inch whatever stick bait in there, it slaps the top of the water. Maybe I don't know. It's like, oh, there's a lizard. Let me eat that real quick. I don't know. It also
looks like if you've ever just taken a worm and thrown it in the water, a lot of times they just kind of straight out and wiggle as they fall. So it kind of looks like that too. But yeah, lizards kind of swim like a crocodile. They'll put them legs back and use their tail. So I'm sure it sort of looks like that, but it still doesn't make any sense. I mean, I guess the wacky rig and the Senko I could see, because you can fish that a little bit of there's absolutely no reason to eat a TRD. It literally looks like you put a hook in its battery and just drop it down there, and it sits there like that. And it just pops away. And then they're like, oh, what's this dumb thing? And
but
eat
you
it.
can throw little craws and stuff.
You can. I'm specifically talking about the TRD and why they eat that dumb bait. I can totally get the little craws and some of they make swim baits now specifically designed kind of for the Ned rig. Some of the one cast fishing soft plastics work really good on the back of a Ned rig. The swim baits, but the turd TRD, maybe that style bait,
maybe that
no sense.
Maybe the TRD, maybe fish eat like turtle poop or something, and that's what a TRD resembles, is like a turtle turd. That's why it's called the turd.
Could be. I mean, you got poop style baits, when John Cruz came on and we talked about those, and that at least makes a little sense, because it kind of looks like a dying bait fish, or a lot of times in the spring you'll see craws missing claws and things because they'll get grabbed and might get away with one claw. But maybe that's what a TRD looks like like a crawfish with no claws.
then-
I don't know.
Okay. So the TRD, and this is the last thing I'll bring up because I know we busted an hour here. The TRD doesn't really look like anything, but then you got guys out there throwing fuzzy dice.
Yeah, the new thing, the fuzzy dice.
I mean, that looks like a
Q-baits.
yeah, like what is that? You know, is that like a miniature jellyfish? I don't know. We don't have those in freshwater, I don't think. But anyways, it just doesn't make sense.
I know
We
it's
give
annoying.
bass too much credit, but then we underestimate them at the same time.
If you guys haven't seen them yet, I'm gonna pull a picture one up real quick. If nobody's seen this, and then John says the TRD does look like a Duracell, 100,000,000%. They said no one uses them because they're afraid to lose their man card. Talking about the Ned rig, I'm not afraid to lose my man card. I'm just not going to use one if I don't have to. Trey will make me. But this is the Q bait he's talking about that's taking the bass fishing world by storm. So
Yeah, what is that? You know what I
Stupid.
mean?
But it gets 8. So
Yeah, somebody flicked a booger in the water and then the bass ate it.
It's gonna get 8 because of the skirt.
I'll have 684 of them in the boat.
Just like with a jig.
Yeah.
Like you guys were seeing the fish tank when that thing just sits there, that those skirts just kind of like fan out. And so when you're working it, probably that bait, that skirt material is gonna pop and move back and forth. It's getting.
But you know what I've seen though? Okay, this is the last thing I'll say. You know what I've seen? I've seen anglers take in their wacky worms, their stick baits, and cutting them down and threading their own skirts through them.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
And making their own. So if you guys are not wanting to drop, because I think those cube baits are actually really expensive, if I'm not mistaken.
That was on
There's a couple of different brands that have like little Senko or TRD style baits that have.
But if you guys are if you're in the business of repurposing your soft plastics, whether or not that's melting them down and pouring your own, you got your own mold. A great way to do that is literally like a straight up sewing needle and taking chunks of your own soft plastics and taking, like, if you have skirting material or if you have old like chatterbaits and jigs and stuff where your skirts busted off them, you can literally make your own and just try it, right? Because
that one I showed the picture of is $20 for 4.
$20 for 4 freaking, I don't even understand why, to be honest with you.
Straight from Japan.
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm sure it works, but I'm not dropping $20 for 4 cubes of soft plastic. I'm not doing it.
Yeah, us too, John. There's one locally I think that's going to start making some cube baits. I'm keeping an eye on. I know he tried to make a mold. I don't know if it worked out, but the last and most important thing you can throw this time of year pre-spawn is throwing your PFD on before you go out on the water and keeping it on. Cold water kills extremely fast. And if you've never been in any cold water submersion training or done anything like that, you don't understand how quickly you lose function of all your body strength, everything. So I have done it. I should have died. Well, I did not. And I was a child and had I had a PFD on. Somehow our family that was there survived. I think I've told that story. I'll share it again one of these days, but wear your PFD anytime the water is below 60 degrees while you're fishing and everything. Just it's not worth the risk, but especially right now when most of the country has water that's either frozen, if you're ice fishing, be safe with the ice, or that's, in the 40s over here on the East Coast, with the exception of Florida, probably Georgia. But I know in North Carolina, we're pretty much all at that mid 40 range right now. And that'll kill you in a hurry. So wear your dang PFD. And
absolutely.
That is about all I got.
No, Ben? The last thing I want to say, and I'm going to turn it over to you and Ben. Hey guys, do us a favor. If you listen to us on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, anything like that, particularly those two, please go on after you've listened to a full episode and leave us a review, whatever star review, whatever thumbs up, however it shakes out. I'm a Spotify guy, so it's stars. It's 1 through 5. So leave us a review. It really helps continue pushing our episodes and stuff like that. And help us out, because that's going to help you guys out, because we're going to get a lot more people on here. Looking forward to our upcoming recorded episodes. So if you just jumped on here and you're not and you don't know our show outside of the Fishing Friday Live, we are recorded. We're all over the media platforms from YouTube, Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Podbean, you name it. We're out there. We got a lot of guests that have been on this show. So leave us a review, and we're gonna be bringing some more good stuff to the table here real soon.
Yeah,
Sweet.
Ben.
Oh, I'm good.
All right. Yeah. Appreciate you all jumping on. Make sure you check out those recorded episodes. They drop every I'm switching the time they drop. So they're dropping Thursday evenings now. We experiment with times and stuff to see what works best for everybody. So they're usually dropping Thursdays at 7 p.m. So you can listen to them Friday on your ride into work or over the weekend, whatever that is. Appreciate everybody's support. Appreciate everybody helping us continue to grow cultures of anglers, being anglers one cast at a time.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Oh God, it's a toad, son. It's a toad, dude.
Yeah. I wake up to a little bit of drool on my pillow, feel like it's gonna be a bad day.